It's federal agents trolling Antifa with Trump's voice. It's hilarious.
What we gotta do is like actually like convince them to take their clothes off and just have an orgy. That's gonna get them to take their clothes off. No, that's what they do. Tactical answer. Tactical
I really don't care about the entire like protest part of the video with like the Antifa nut jobs over there like screaming at ICE and everything, like whatever, dude. I could care less. The funny part to me is the fact that in the very beginning of this video that they actually had Donald Trump telling them basically that it was an unlawful assembly and to like disperse. That made me laugh. I don't know. I just look, hey, listen, you're right. We haven't been covering the protests. We haven't been paying attention to that stuff. Obviously, people in Portland are going to do Portland things. It just is what it is. But over inside Syria, we got some other problems, right? We actually have massacres that are taking place. We got people dying. We got bombs that are dropping. We've got actual war that's going on. And that is something that we need to talk about that hasn't been being covered in mainstream media. A lot of this stuff is actually, how do I want to say this? A lot of this stuff is being overshadowed, right, by the Epstein files. I'm actually personally really surprised that we're still talking about it. Because not a heck of a lot of information was actually put out on it. A lot of people want the list. They're pissed off. They want to know where it's at. But I can sit here and I could whine and complain to you guys about the Epstein files for the next hour and a half. Trust me. But there's actual things that are going on that we need to talk about. And so when that comes out, yeah, we're going to get there. CJ Ladder says Ukraine with a question mark. Yeah, we got some stuff to talk about as far as Ukraine goes. Some good news is coming out that way, right? I ended up showing a little bit of Ukraine this morning. As a matter of fact, there was a report that ended up coming in. If you want me to touch on Ukraine before we get into everything, CJ, man, let me just grab that real quick and put it up on there. Cause you know, I'm always going to have love for you, CJ. So let me grab this, because I was talking about it over at the end of this morning's show. Look at this. So last night I ended up showing, and I said, listen, Russian soldiers have made like zero gains anywhere along the front in the latest report that got put out by ISW. Literally showed on every single front over on the Ukrainian front line, on every single front, that Russia hasn't been able to advance anywhere. So they're constantly launching offensive operations, but zero confirmed territorial gains by Russia. None. They just don't have them. And so how did that camera get moved off center? That's weird. So zero territorial gains by Russia. All right, great. Well, that would mean that a bunch of Russians are dying because they're just throwing themselves in the meat grinder. And then I started thinking, okay, well, Ukraine is going over there. They're attacking supply lines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, must be something really kind of cool to see. And that would be like the partisan forces actually doing something to also disrupt Russian troops. And then I came across this.
Илюша! Илюша! Алло! Слышь меня? Пальцев сколько? Сколько? Каких 4, блядь? 3? Сейчас сколько? Чё болит? Болит чё?
Yeah, so what ended up happening to this guy is he ended up getting poisoned, and they're saying that the water supply for these troops ended up getting poisoned. Syfe says, you look great, Matt. Keep it up. Thanks, man. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll do my best to keep that running, man. Yeah, and CJ says he saw it, WTF. Well, I mean, it was reported that this guy ended up dying afterwards, right? So this guy ended up getting poisoned and dying. Now, why is that important? And I talked about like the Russian supply lines and everything else, and how does that go apart? Look, this isn't like the Ukrainian military per se that's doing this, right? My prediction would be that it is partisan forces that are helping out with the Russian supply lines. Russia is dwindling on the front lines. Over 100,000 dead this year up to date, right? They don't have enough troops to sit back and go, you know what? We're going to offload all this water from the train. Then we're going to stack it over there. And then we're going to have it moved in a logistical convoy between point A and point B, right? And then we're going to like all of that crap. No. When that stuff ends up getting shipped in, they're going to have civilians that are offloading it. They're going to have civilian transport vehicles that are taking it between point A and point B. And in all of that time, that stuff is susceptible to things like this. And it looks like the partisan forces actually got their act together and started doing things of this nature over there. That would be my assessment. That would be my judgment. And that's pretty cool because that means there's a huge resistance force that's kind of hanging out, because that's a very, simple but also sophisticated operation in order to pull off. Colby says, off topic, but in regards to the poisoning of the Russian water you were talking about this morning, oh, Colby, you dropped that before I actually brought it up now, didn't you? It sounds like a variation of Operation Eldest Son. Colby, I'm not familiar with Operation Eldest Son. I like to think that I'm schooled up on a lot of different things, but that one's not ringing a bell, to be honest with you. Mike Mayo says, anyone with 1 cent of sense knows that we will never find out about the Epstein operation. You're right. And if before I even get into everything, because people are still slowly rolling in here, right? Getting used to the new time that we're starting tonight. I want you, it is a fact, all right, that Epstein was providing information, right? That's why he ended up not getting charged in the state of Florida. The document got released. I went over it the other day and I ended up showing it. Now, what if there was something that Epstein was providing information on? Because I want you to picture this, right? As people are coming in, this is the most that you're going to get out of me over Epstein, but I have put some thought into this. We know that he was a source, that he is providing information. You look at the type of people that he's running around with and the type of people that he's rubbing shoulders with on a daily basis. Those people that he's rubbing shoulders with on a daily basis, right? Or at least every month, every couple months, right? Are all some very influential people, not just from here inside of the United States, but around the world. And I think a lot of people are confusing this and saying, well, it's politicians and it's this and it's that and it's everything else. But if you really get into the conspiracy theory side of the house and you start thinking about it, lobbyists are very powerful. There is a reason people are kind of upset with lobbyists. I happen to be one of them, right? But there's a reason people are upset with lobbyists. There's a reason that certain companies end up getting certain contracts. There's a reason, all right, bills get passed with so much pork barrel and things like that go into it. And it's also that they can get support and they can remain in office. Well, what do you think the odds are that some of these rich people that Epstein's running around with, that he had over at his island, maybe weren't necessary politicians that everybody, thinks that there ought to be something over there? What if it's actually people that are paying Epstein money in order to get information and dirt to control these politicians? And that it's all this dirty little ring. And it's not just U.S. politicians when you're on that scale. You're talking about world leaders. Right? This scandal is bigger than the United States of America. It's bigger than everything. I feel like everybody has looked at this as this little closed-minded deal, as if but it's not really. It would be much bigger if you're gonna throw out there that this is what's going on. Let's go for the freaking gusto, baby. Scott Bevins coming in, gifting I Speak the Truth membership. Colby says Operation Eldest Son was a psyop where the U.S. smuggled faulty ammo into Vietnamese supply depots that would, oh yeah, and cause mistrust in the ammunition they were supplied with. Yeah. Yep. Sky Guide coming in, gifting out 20 as well so soon. Yeah. Do I think that would be an eldest son type situation? No, I think it's quite literally what it is. I think it's a poisoning. Eldest son, you had, well, I'm not going to get into how that happened in the people really need to go look it up because some of it's not even doing that. Some of it, I'm just going to stop. There is a lot that goes into that. There is a lot of different ways that stuff actually went down, and it was really, really clever. So yeah, I'm just gonna shut up on that one. For my own personal sake. Matt Wami says, I like the earlier start time. Thanks for all the work that you put in and keep up speaking the truth. Appreciate it. Yeah. I tried an earlier start time probably about a year ago, and there's a lot of people that were not very happy about it for some reason, but I am more than okay with having a little bit of an earlier start time. Last night, before we end up getting into everything else too, I want to talk to you guys a little bit. It's funny because people end up accusing me of being a staunch Trump supporter and so on and so forth. And I'm not. I told you that the guy's got a lot of work to do and he ends up getting tricked over. And last night I had actually sat down and I said, well, maybe he's finally learned his lessons between Putin and Iran when it comes to negotiating peace deals. Not so sure.
Do you think that the Gulf area now is more secure? And do you believe that a negotiation with Iran is necessary at this stage?
Well, I definitely believe that the volatility of the situation has been reduced. And we didn't know where it was going to go on the Sunday. We were very glad when we found out on the Monday. Let me put it that way. And should the Iranians want to negotiate, I believe the ball's in their court. That is the true reality of where we stand today. They are the ones that stand to benefit from a negotiation.
And they do. They want to negotiate. They want to negotiate badly. We're in no rush because, we said we could have made a deal. They should have made a deal. And then we bombed the hell out of their various places. We're in no rush, but if they want to negotiate, we're here.
Do you think that the Gulf area now is...
Oh, really? Oh, really? Matt, earlier start time helps out the East Coast. Thank you. Yeah, of course, Scott. I mean, that was kind of one of the, I don't know, thought processes going into it is for the East Coast, you guys, I mean, it wouldn't start till 10. You're not getting done till 11. Maybe you guys get like a little bit more rest. Hell, man, I don't know. But yeah, let's talk about this. Yeah, so Trump thinks that Iran actually wants to negotiate. And that is most certainly not the words that are being spoken publicly, right, by Iran at all. It's not. Ayatollah finally came out with a new statement yesterday bragging about like the impact that they ended up having when they ended up targeting the U.S. forces and that we felt their wrath and everything else because they ended up hitting like a radar site or a communication site over at al-Assad. But no, Iran's not wanting to. They're still wanting to enrich uranium. And so I think that issue is still going to be up and forthcoming. As a matter of fact, I can tell you that Iran didn't learn their lesson because a ballistic missile ended up getting fired over Israel today, and we'll go over that in just a sec. But I want you guys to check this out. There's a shipment of weapons that was en route, all right, from Iran going into Yemen that ended up getting intercepted by, I want to say it was Syrian. Oh, no, it was Yemen. I'm sorry. It was Saudi-backed Yemeni forces, because for those of you that don't know, over inside Yemen, the actual government in charge of the country technically is not the Houthis, even though they say that they're the Yemeni armed forces and all that other crap. No, the Houthis are not. All right. So it's the actual legitimate government of Yemen backed by Saudi. Look at all this crap that they found. Right. Pretty cool. Right. Lots of stuff that was being sent over to the Houthis from Iran that they ended up interdicting somewhere off in the freaking ocean. Right. So somebody said, Mike says, who found this? It was the Yemeni armed forces, like the legitimate Yemeni government, right? The legitimate military of Yemen that was being backed by Saudi Arabia. Some of the original reports that ended up coming out on this was stating that it was the United States that had actually interdicted this vessel and grabbed all this stuff. That's not true. Do I think that the United States probably had their fingers in it? Sure. All right. Are we going to take credit for it? Absolutely not. Why? Because we want to give, Yemen, the official government of Yemen, credit for it. Now, the crazy thing about this, and it sparked up a bunch of other conspiracies that were going into it, was this right here. That you ended up having the instruction manuals that went along with a bunch of the munitions and everything else that were all written in Farsi, or as some people like to refer to it as Persian, right? Which means that all of these instruction manuals, everything ended up coming out of Iran. And today, the Houthis ended up firing a ballistic missile and several drones over at Israel, and they wanted to brag about it, and they threw it out there. It got interdicted. I can show you guys that here in just a sec. That's what they did. And so Iran didn't learn their lesson. And just as we had predicted, they're going through their proxy forces, and they're going to continue to fund those proxy forces. And they're going to keep that 1 degree of separation so that they can sit back and they can say, you know what? We're doing good. We're not, how do you want to say this? We're not attacking Israel. We're not firing ballistic missiles at them. Maybe we're giving stuff to the Houthis. I don't know. Maybe we are. Yeah, who knows? Maybe somebody else just wrote that instruction manual in Farsi, crap. But I mean, that's the type of stuff that's out there floating around. But yeah, Israel ended up having another ballistic missile shot at by the Houthis today, right? And I had the interception video. I don't know where it went, but it was another exo-atmospheric interception. It was actually a really beautiful one, big starburst up in the sky, but I ended up losing it. So there's an interceptor going up over there. Houthis ended up saying that they ended up targeting the Ben Gurion airport. For some reason, I always end up getting the name of that main international airport wrong. But yeah, they went after the airport Obviously, it didn't get there. Neither did the drones, to the best of my knowledge. A couple drones did find their way over into Iraq and Syria, though, or I'm sorry, over into Iraq in the last 48 hours and ended up striking 2 U.S. ran oil fields over there. But other than that, no serious damage or no serious impacts. And the one thing that actually did cause serious damage that I ended up going over this morning had to do with the ongoing fighting that's taking place over inside Syria. Over on national TV today, Syrian national TV, this is actually what went down.
وزير الدفاع الاحتلال الإسرائيلي إسرائيل كاتس إن الجيش سيواصل مهاجمة قوات.
That was strike number 1 that ended up hitting, right? And it ended up striking the Ministry of Defense. That was strike number 1 on the MOD. At the same time, strike number 1 ended up hitting the MOD. You ended up having the presidential palace over inside Damascus that had a bomb fall outside, and then a report of another bomb and another bomb that were falling outside of it. And then before you know it, this entire place ended up just getting smashed by an Israeli airstrike. Aftermath of that sucker, which ended up getting shared with me this morning over on the live stream, looks exactly like this. I mean, Israel ended up like leveling the crap out of this thing. Going to town. Lots of people ended up getting killed in that particular airstrike alone. I do have updated, how do I want to say this? Not updated, but, assessed casualties of all of the fighting that's taking place down in Al-Suwaida, down in the south. And we're going to go over that in a sec. Here is the actual much better video that ended up coming out, a little bit more HD quality, if you will, of the follow-on airstrikes that ended up taking place over at the Syrian MOD.
يا شباب قصف جديد مبنى هيئة الأركان خالص قصف جديد يا شباب قصف خطونا بسرعة 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 بسرعة
إذا استهداف مبنى هيئة الأركان بشكل كامل.
قصف ثاني دمروه.
منتصر صوتك على الهواء.
قصف هيئة الأركان بغارتين. نعم قصف بغارتين استهدفت هيئة الأركان بشكل مزدوج من اليمين ومن اليسار. شاهدنا قطع من المبنى تتطاير حقيقة.
I mean, is it me or is there just now a straight up hole in the side of that building? Like, yeah, there is a straight up hole in the side of that building that they ended up kicking out. And Israel did not wait too long, man. It was maybe like an hour or two after they ended up conducting that airstrike that they ended up releasing like the actual freaking aircraft footage of that building getting struck. And you can see there over on that side where it has just completely blasted straight through the MOD, or presumably what would be the MOD. And it's absolutely nuts to me. And then I see other people that are actually reporting Jolani as if he is the legitimate president, over in 4K, right? Like, that's nuts. You can literally watch war unfold in the 21st century as like all of this crap goes down. It's freaking wild to me that that's happening. Now, all of this started a couple days ago over inside of Syria when the Druze were getting attacked by little local militias down there in the south. I actually couldn't believe some of the words that ended up coming out of Marco Rubio's mouth today, which I'm going to play for you as soon as I get done telling you the tale of what happened after that. Druze obviously go to defend themselves. Other Druze end up showing up to this town over in southern Syria, and they start fighting back. HTS launches an attack at the direction of Jolani and freaking whoever the hell's running HTS. All right, and then it turns into this freaking battle. And then when they get down there, they start like massacring and doing all sorts of freaking horrible things to these people that I personally just do not freaking agree with. All of this was taking place. Let me zoom out of Ukraine and let me get you guys back over here. All of this was actually taking place over in southern Syria in the town of Al-Suwaida, right? This town right over here to the south. It's about 70 kilometers or so down this main route, 70 kilometers or so from over inside of the Golan Heights. What absolutely blew my mind was Marco Rubio's statement on this entire situation. When I say what, like his belief on this entire situation, I was like, there's no way this guy is that retarded, but it turns out he is. Like he literally is that retarded. Come on, where's this video of what he said? Oh, no, you don't get away with that, mister. Nope. You don't get away with being that silly. I was like, Marco Rubio's done lost his dang mind. He claimed that it was sheerly a misunderstanding that took place. He said it was just a misunderstanding. Give this a listen.
Obviously, these are historic, long-time rivalries between different groups in the southwest of Syria, Bedouins, the Druze community, and it led to an unfortunate situation and a misunderstanding, it looks like, between the Israeli side and the Syrian side. So we've been engaged with them all morning long and all night long with both sides, and we think we're on our way towards a real de-escalation and then hopefully get back on track in helping Syria build a country and arriving at a situation there in the Middle East is far more stable. So in the next few hours, we hope to see some real progress to end what you've been seeing over the last couple hours. Yeah.
Oh, you know what we call that, Marco Rubio? You know what we call that? We call that gaslighting. That's what we call that. There was no misunderstanding about what was taking place. There was no misunderstanding back in April when HTS went down to the exact same place and tried to murder Druze. And they did. There was entire, villages of men that were getting rounded up and shoved down to open fields and getting freaking schwacked. Back in April. And here we are in July, and the same thing starts happening, and they go to defend themselves, and a firefight kicks off between them and some local freaking Bedouins, as he so eloquently described. And then HTS launched an attack to quell the violence, to establish peace and normalcy. And you're about to see what some of that peace and normalcy actually look like that HTS brought down in that area. And a very good reason why we have Druze, which is why I titled it the way I did, Syria overran by Israelis. Yeah, that's 100% true. The Israeli Druze lost their dang mind and started storming across the border today, getting picked up in frickin' convoys. Some of them have been intercepted by HTS and other little local militias. And you'll see that here in just a sec as well. Make no mistake about it, in Matt's opinion, this is Rubio's attempt to cope. Because last week, he ended up removing the FTO designation from HTS. Then they turn around and do terrorist things. The devil you don't know coming in and gifting out 10 Speak the Truth memberships. Appreciate you, sir. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And Dylan Hansen also coming in and gifting out an additional 10 Speak the Truth memberships. Now, if you guys are following me over on X, you likely already saw this information, but it is important to note that Jelani is kind of like a raging pile of garbage. If you didn't know, this is his wanted picture over on Interpol's website for being a terrorist pile of garbage. And then we can take it even further, and I could be like, you know what? Not only is there the wanted picture from Interpol, but we could also go and we could pull up, information from the UN as well, why sanctions are on him and several other things. So it seems to me like maybe Rubio needs to be a little bit better informed on this entire situation overall. Because him claiming it's a misunderstanding, that's a gross misinterpretation. I think the only people that are misunderstanding based on that statement of what actually took place is the United States government, sadly enough, and or the Secretary of State.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
I can't do all the beeping and the Allahu Akbar, but what you're looking at is the MOD following that massive airstrike that I ended up showing you guys just a little bit ago, right? So that's the ground outside of it. And look at that. That whole building ended up getting collapsed on there. Now, at the same time that those airstrikes were taking place on the presidential palace, it is being rumored that Turkey actually warned Jelani that the airstrikes were coming and that Jelani actually tucked tail and ran, and he's somewhere in hiding. We don't know where he's at, and he's actually expected to make some statements in a little bit. But the Syrian government did come out and make a statement today basically saying that they're going to hold the people that are doing this crap responsible. That's what we ended up saying. And then we ended up having what do you call it, U.S. ambassador over to Syria coming out and stating that, you know what, everybody just needs to be held accountable. Whoever's responsible for this situation needs to get held accountable. And instead of just pointing the finger where it belongs, it's very clear that Jelani and his cronies, all right, HTS, i.e. ISIS, i.e. Ansarullah, or I'm sorry, not Ansarullah, the Al-Nusra Front, that those people are the ones that are responsible for a lot of this crap that's going on. So, of course, the Druze are going to go and they're going to defend themselves, right? Israel also, I heard rumors, all right? I heard rumors. Somebody told me, and I haven't verified it yet. That was one of the things I should probably looked at. But I did hear rumors that Chuck Holton is on the ground over there and that he heard from the Israelis that if Syria doesn't stop this crap, that the IDF will be going in on the ground. So if yeah, not a joke. Takia, there's a good word for you. Yeah, that's a good one. Basically, if HTS doesn't stop going in and going after the Druze, that the IDF's going to go in and do something about it. They were warned back in April when they started massacring the Druze then that the IDF would not take that lying down and that they're going to take care of those people, that they're not going to be allowed to commit genocide that close to their border against people that have like straight up freaking ties. Yes, he is still on Interpol, Trouble Actual. That is a fact. He's still on Interpol. HTS is still listed as a foreign terror organization by the UN and by several other freaking countries, right? Like, he doesn't get a free ride. That's why he is not the president of Syria, because the international community doesn't want it. There's a reason. There is an absolute reason why he's not the president of Syria. He's likely never going to be, and he's probably going to be 6 feet underground or however deep they can dig and then throw rocks on top of his body so that nobody freaking eats it, right? But he's and digs it up, lights it on fire, and freaking burns it. Jelani's probably going to be dead in just a little bit. This guy says, it is wild to see Matt bring this info out. Then days later, the MSM half-ass reports it. Great job, Matt. Yeah, I appreciate you, man. Yeah, I don't know what the MSM, like the mainstream media, has actually said about this. I have absolutely no idea, but what I can tell you, that's a look at, I believe, the top of the hill where the presidential palace is at, following like another one of the airstrikes, right? And so, yeah, the mainstream media is not going to do a very good job covering this, and nobody is holding, in my opinion, in the mainstream media is holding the Trump administration accountable. Definitely not holding Marco Rubio accountable for removing the designation from HTS. 3M Forge coming in gifting out 5 Speak the Truth memberships. Like, how pissed off do you think a lot of Americans would be knowing that Al-Jilani, somebody that used to be a member of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, right, that's wanted by Interpol, that's wanted by the UN, that runs a freaking foreign terror organization, that we were just like, you know what? He's a good guy now. We're going to put some faith in him. That's literally what we did. And he's not our ally by any means, and he's on shaky grounds, but I don't know if he gets away with this crap. I mean, what is our line in the sand? Let's use Obama over here. What is our line in the sand that they're not allowed to cross? You guys remember that was Obama drawing a line in the sand for intervention in Syria, which was chemical weapons being used by the Assad regime. And then Assad used chemical weapons. And we were like, meh, maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was some terrorists. Maybe he didn't do it, right? So, yeah, I think that at this point, if the United States doesn't come in and like actually do something about this, right, that there is no line in the sand, that Jelani is basically going to be carte blanche as far as America is concerned to do whatever the hell they want. And maybe we don't want to piss off Turkey because Turkey's backing Jelani. Maybe that's the case. But either way, it's an issue and it needs to be addressed. Intel Skitto ended up coming up with these figures from everything. He said that about 700, right, of Jelani's men have been killed. He said all but 50 of them were killed by IDF airstrikes. That's actually pretty freaking believable. 19 Bedouin gunmen, mainly from the Lajat tribe, ended up dying. 50 Druze militiamen ended up getting killed, 2 civilians, and around 50 to 200 Druze civilians had crossed the border from Israel into Syria. I actually think that number is a hell of a lot higher just based on some of the videos that I ended up seeing, way more than that. So we're still just sitting like right around 1,000 so far, as for where everything went. Now, we did get information earlier today that there was a peace agreement that ended up getting signed in between, like, or agreed upon, but between the Druze and HTS. And that lasted for about an hour, I think, right? Where there was like some peace and quiet. And then we started getting reports of HTS going in to attack Saweetie again. And then we started getting reports of additional Israeli airstrikes that were raging, not just in the south. Now, that airstrike right there is reportedly targeting an HTS convoy that was on its way from Damascus, working its way down over into Al-Saweetie. And so the Israelis are tracking this crap. And every time they see a large convoy, dude, they're bombing the crap out of them. So Israel isn't playing a small role in this whatsoever. Yesterday, when we talked about this, it was Israel is just taking out like 1 or 2 tanks, you know, knocking out some of their armor to push them out of Saweetie, and it worked. And then we started seeing like more advanced fighters that were pushing towards the line as like the sun started to go down. That is the first strike that I ended up seeing being launched by Israel before the sun went down, and then ended up seeing this. This next video is actually coming to you guys out of Damascus overnight.
الآن غارة جديدة على معظمية الشام. الآن غارة جديدة على معظمية الشام. الآن.
Yeah, I'm I see the comment over there that somebody had written about it, just being MSM propaganda, and I think you're right. And I'm sorry, like nobody believes the mainstream media anymore. Pretty much nobody. And I seriously mean that, because the mainstream media very clearly at this point in time has a biased agenda. Depending on what outlet you're looking at, they're on either the left side or they're on the right side. I've sat here and I've given the Trump administration for doing good things. I've done it as recently as I don't know, the last couple of days. I think even last night I ended up giving Trump praise at the same time I ended up crapping on him, right? But for different decisions as far as I'm concerned, and I back it up with different reasons that I believe so. Mainstream media will sit there and they'll go, yeah, you know what? No, they had a ceasefire agreement. Look, move along, folks. Nothing to see here, right? And who the hell is coming up? When was the last time you saw mainstream media showing you pictures of that, right? Going, hey, that guy that Trump shook hands with, yeah, he's still wanted by Interpol. Yeah, that guy who Marco Rubio, the guy that runs that terror organization, yeah, he's still wanted by Interpol. It's over there on their website today. If you guys go over to my X account, which you can see it down in the bottom, right below my face here, you go over and look at it. There's actually a link to all this crap. And you guys can find it and you find the appropriate post. It's on my timeline. And you can go over there and you can discover that he is a raging pile of garbage. And he still is to this day, as far as the international community is concerned. So screw him. As far as I'm concerned, screw Jelani, right? Yeah, if you're wondering what that is, that's just more airstrikes being conducted over outside of Damascus. But the thing is that they ended up taking it a hell of a lot further than Damascus. Let me grab the map here. It's where did I put my map? Let me keep moving this along. I kind of use my map as my little marker as I go in here. This next video, so I want you guys to see this, okay? This is where the fighting's taking place, all the way down here. So here's Al Sawida, okay? So I'm going to measure distance. This is Al Sawida, roughly. I just pinned it right outside. Those airstrikes I showed you that were on the highway, here's Damascus up over here in the top corner. Maybe I blow it up and it looks a little bit bigger for you guys. I want you to see this. This next airstrike video that I'm showing you that got launched by Israel is coming all the way up here, over in Latakia. It's almost 200 miles away, all right? 200 miles away. Brian Dale says, what's the end game? Should we confront HTS or give them a chance and see what happens? Oh, Brian Dale, let me show this next video real quick, man, and then I will get into that question, because that's actually a really, really good question about what the heck it is that we should be doing over there. Again, this is Latakia, all right? This is the 107th Brigade military base, all right, over inside of Syria, all the way up there, 200 miles away from where the fighting is currently taking place. Magically, a bomb fell out of the sky up there today. Now, that is really far away for Israel to be conducting airstrikes. It makes you wonder why they're doing it so far up there, right? Why is Israel conducting airstrikes that far to the north, over outside of that particular military base? Well, if we go to take a look at a map, if I remember right, if my memory serves me correct, and this is just me thinking out loud, hey, stop, let's go ahead and clear those measurements. There's actually a port over outside of Latakia. Yep, there it is. You can see it. Latakia port. Boom. Right? So if they have a major military, oh, you guys can't see that. I can. So there's a port over outside of Latakia. So I would assume that they were getting weapon shipment support from different international a-holes, right, that were over there, and that the Israeli Defense Force knows exactly where they're at. They sent in the Israeli Air Force and started bombing and taking out some of those key logistical routes and key supplies that they would end up needing to get down in there. That's what makes sense to me. Now, Brian, to answer your question, you said, what's the end game? Should we confront HTS or give them a chance and see what happens? No. We shouldn't give HTS a chance. Their record is very, very clear over the last decade plus, and their leader's record is very, very clear over the last 2 decades. Radical Islamic terror organization. That's like saying, should we give Al-Qaeda a chance, or should we give the Taliban a chance, or should we give ISIS a chance? Should we give Al-Shabaab a chance? Should we give the Houthis a chance? Should we give Hamas a chance? No, we absolutely shouldn't. As a matter of fact, this situation is almost a little bit worse when you actually start talking about Jolani. Jolani being one of how do I want to say this? saying he was friends with al-Baghdadi, I don't think is good enough. And I know I've stated this before, that he's got ties, okay, to Muhammad's bloodline, so he could essentially declare a caliphate if he would like over inside of Syria and start calling other people in. But there's a reason he didn't end up joining up underneath ISIS and underneath al-Baghdadi. In Matt's opinion, the man wanted the power for himself, which he absolutely did. It was his goal. It was like literally his stated goal when he came up with HTS, that he wanted to overthrow the Assad regime and basically have a Sharia law ran country, i.e. another freaking caliphate. And if he declares himself a caliph, well, so be it. And by the way, everybody says that he was voted in. Yeah, you know who voted him in? HTS, man. HTS and all of his other little militant nut jobs. All right, so he wasn't voted in mass by the people all over freaking Syria. They didn't hold a free and fair election and do any of that crap. It was probably more crooked than what Russia did over inside Crimea when they decided to go in and annex that sucker, right? Probably 10 times more crooked, because at least Russia had people all across Crimea, allegedly, that were voting, albeit at gunpoint. All this crap actually got done all the way down here over in Damascus. That's it. That's it. The reason he ended up being able to do that, the reason he can declare himself the interim president, again, it's him declaring himself, not the international community or anybody else, is because Assad ended up running away and getting his back over into Russia. So I have zero, how do I want to say this? I have absolutely zero confidence when it comes to him being declared president, him doing anything. And no, I don't think we should be giving him anything other than what David Castro just said over the comment section, which is dirt naps all around. I just like that airstrike video. I mean, it's same freaking place. Now, here's something else. All right. Now, what they were saying is that these are, like, the report is that the people that I'm about to put up on your screen are suicide bombers that are going over into Al Sawida. And I want you to take a look at how many there are, how well equipped some of them are, and how ill equipped some of them are as well. Incog Fairday says, who would be sending arms besides Turkey? Yeah, I think Turkey would be one of them. Russia's also got a military base up over there, pretty sure that they're holding on to. And it's been my assessment for the longest time that all Russia gives a crap about is destabilizing the region, because the more they can destabilize the region, the more attention they can draw from themselves, the more of these BS atrocities they can commit over inside of Ukraine. And in addition to that, the more that they can weaken the U.S. military supplies that are going to be going into Ukraine. If Israel is buying up all of these American weapons, right, and we are supplying all of these American weapons underneath Trump's plan for over inside of Ukraine, look what just happened the other day. We ended up having to pull back specific aerial defense assets that were on their way over into Ukraine for this war in the Middle East. That helps Russia. That absolutely helps Russia, right? And all of this destabilization, every freaking glide bomb that gets bought up, every single freaking like 2,000 pounder, all of this other crap, as we start talking about this influx of equipment that's going to be going into Ukraine, because now NATO can buy it from the United States, we will manufacture it, and they can give it to Ukraine, and Ukraine can go and use it against the Russians. That's good. That's a good thing. But if all of our munitions are being soaked up in the Middle East, and we have troops that are actually at risk over in the Middle East, where do you think we're going to prioritize where we're sending that equipment? It's not that hard to figure out. And I honestly, I think it's that simple. Brian Dale, FYI, I had to change fight to confront for the question to post. YouTube censors. You're kidding me. You couldn't even put the word fight in there? That's insane. That's absolutely insane. I love that you can still use the word dirt nap, though. That has to be. So anyways, yeah, here's a video of some of the fighting that took place, about 2.5 minute-ish video coming out of Al Sawida down in the south, and it's on the jihadist side.
Allahu Akbar. الخماسية عشيرة العادي بالصفوف الأولى مع المجاهدين باقتحام بلدة حصر في الريف السوداء الشرقي وتطهيرها من عبدة العجل لدروز الخنازير. الله أكبر. بالنص كافة يا أخوي بلدة حج حج من السويداء هيا الله المجاهدين هيا الله عشيرة آل عودي
Yeah, about that, right? About that. So I just dropped a new poll over in the chat. I'm really curious if you guys want to know if you're going to watch it, if you're going to share it and do all those other good things that end up coming along with, me putting out videos together. Because I did speak on it a little bit earlier, and I'm getting questions about it. Yeah, and so I have no problem doing that if that's actually something you guys want me to do. Not normally the type of stuff that I comment on, but yeah, I've got no problem cranking out that video for you guys. Brian Dale says, FYI, I had to change fight to confront. Oh, yeah. No, sorry, Brian. I already got that one. My bad. Yep. Dirt nap. Use dirt nap. Pink mist is the jam, says Brian Dale. Yeah, pink mist is another good one. Christian says, what other group can we support militarily to take over and overthrow this dirtbag? Also, I haven't heard your take on the Epstein list, so keep up the good work. That's why that pulls up there, actually, because you ended up making that super chat, because I want to know, right, what you guys think about it. So what other group? Well, you have the SDF, or the Syrian Defense Forces, that the United States government has actually been partnered with for quite some time, which consists of like Kurds, right? And those Kurds, number one, have been needing their own land for a very, very, very long time. How many Islamic nations does the Middle East actually need, right? How many do they need? Because there is the Islamic everything over there. Like, you can throw a freaking dart with your eyes closed at the Middle East and you're going to hit an Islamic nation, right? So yeah, they got a ton. But the Kurds have been getting massacred and prosecuted like over time. You know, if you want to talk about genocide that occurs to a lot of people, them. So that would be my answer to you, right? Now, that would piss off Turkey because Turkey doesn't have one, right? Like, or I'm sorry, Turkey hates the Kurds, like flat out. They don't like them. As a matter of fact, like, declare some of them like terrorists, right? But yeah, that would be Matt's take on it to be absolutely true. That's where that needs to go. And let's see here. 502 Outlaw becoming a true supporter. Dude, it always does that to you, man. Looks like a bunch of you guys do want me to do a thing on the Epstein list. We're like 200 and almost 300 votes in. And yeah, 75% of you guys are like, yes, dude, you better do a video on the Epstein list. Okay, fine. So I'll take my time tomorrow and I'll do a video on the Epstein list for you guys after the morning broadcast. I'll put it out. You guys will have it tomorrow afternoon. All right. Here's the crazy part. And this is what Matt thinks about the Epstein list. Let me grab this. Well, you know what? I'll put it this way. This is what I think about the Epstein list. I think that there is some very, very powerful people that are involved in the Epstein list. And I mean some very, very powerful people that are involved in the Epstein list. And when I say there's very powerful people, I don't mean politicians. And I think the politicians is where everybody's like getting their focus and they're saying, hey, no, we want to know what these politicians are doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we know Epstein, and I shared it on the podcast like last week, was an informant down inside Florida. And that's why he ended up having his charges dropped or basically held over his head so that he could keep working with law enforcement authorities. So we know that, right? Like, that's not a secret. That's out there. That's been out there. We know that's where Epstein was at. But Matt's opinion is that the people he was collecting information on weren't actually politicians. I think he was collecting information on all of the other people that were coming out there to Epstein Island, or all the other people that he was rubbing shoulders with who were like different business leaders. And of course, he's doing dirty information. Now, those politicians, one way to influence them is by, how do you want to say, money, right? So some politicians can be influenced by money, but some of them also end up getting blackmailed, And if you want my opinion on it, I think the entire thing was a giant blackmail ring, which is why there was cameras all over the house. That's why Pam Bondi's talking and saying, yeah, we've got like thousands of hours of footage, but you're not going to see them because I'm not going to re-victimize the victims of what was taking place. Because all of those freaking cameras, all of those cameras were likely used to blackmail people. And not just here in the United States, but globally. All those different global leaders and every freaking thing else. And you want to know what happened to the Epstein list? You want to know what happened to the Epstein list? If you guys didn't know, there's a massive fire over around Area 51 right now. I was talking with Nate this morning, Nate Vance, and we were going over this fire. And Nate made a comment. And he goes, it's probably where the Epstein list is at. And I was like, you're absolutely right. And then we went even further down the rabbit hole, and we determined that Epstein list is actually being held out at Area 51, which is currently on fire. Fire's been going on for a couple weeks now, and that this fire was likely started by the Jewish space lasers because Epstein obviously was a Mossad agent, for anybody that doesn't know, right? And so who better to actually start the fire than like the Jews, right? With their massive space lasers going after the frickin' Epstein list so that nobody can see it. Yeah, you want a conspiracy theory? There's one for you. That's a freaking conspiracy theory. Yeah, no, that's not what actually happened. So that's all I'm going to talk about the Epstein list. I'll put out a video for you guys tomorrow. I commented on it a little bit earlier. This picture I'm going to go put up on your screen. I'm going to warn you guys. It's like quasi YouTube friendly. All right. Oh man, Ozzy Mick, you're turning 41 tomorrow. It's time to party Red Solo Cup all day long. Heck yeah, Ozzy Mick. Ozzy, I know you don't know this, but it's actually my birthday next week. And guess how old I turn? I turn 41, believe it or not. I do. I turn 41 next week. How insane is that? All right. So over in Al Suwaida, there was a hospital. I talked to you guys about it. I told you that HTS had actually gone through the hospital and murdered everybody. There's a big video about it. This is still image that's kind of blurred out a little bit that I'm going to go ahead and throw up on the screen. So if you don't want to see it, maybe just close your eyes. All right. These are like, this is a still shot that ended up coming out from that video. And what you're looking at in that particular image is literally stacks of bodies. Stacks of bodies. When HTS had gone into that hospital, they murdered everybody. You can see healthcare workers, you can see young children, you can see tons of people that they ended up murdering. There must have been like 100 bodies stacked up inside that hospital. And they literally stacked them. They stacked them in this one room. They shot them while they were laying on their gurneys. There was people that were clearly injured from some of the fighting that was taking place, and they just went after them. And just because they were injured by the fighting doesn't mean that they were actually enemy combatants. All right. HTS was actually launching like freaking surface rockets and things like that over into the town. Oh, not playing the video. Sorry. They were actually like launching surface rockets and stuff like that over into the town. And on top of that, right, they have been going around for the people that they haven't killed or the people that they did kill prior to them killing them. They were doing things like this.
ما شاطر غشيتني انت غشيتني يا ابو اسلام خليت لك شوي كفو معك انت.
Man, look at HTS bringing peace and stability to southern Syria. They're doing such a good job, right? They're doing such a good job. I'm so happy the Secretary of State ended up moving the FTO designation. So what they're doing is they're humiliating these guys because they're Druze. And one of the big things about the Druze is their mustaches, right? It's like a point of pride for them. So this guy is going around cutting off all their mustaches. And reportedly what they were doing, on top of ripping out their mustaches, you can actually see blood coming out of there. So maybe it was just a little bit too hard for him to actually rip out. After they do that, after they humiliate them, after they do that crap, then they go over and then they shoot them. So they go and they do this crap, and they beat them, and then they go over and they start shooting them. Stop making so much noise. Love of God. Now, I ended up showing you guys images this morning of a church that ended up getting burnt down. This is people prior to that church that HTS ended up entering over inside of Suwaida, where people were actually hiding from all of the shelling and everything else that got taken place. This church actually did, in fact, end up getting burnt to the ground. And I ended up running the images side by side. You can see it's the same freaking place. So whether or not the church got struck by indirect fire and ended up burning that way, I highly doubt it, because the amount of destruction that was actually in there afterwards, it most certainly looked like it was just destroyed, like it was purposely done. But so HTS can't possibly be going into this town to restore peace and normalcy because of some infighting that was taking place down there and burn the entire place to the ground for one side. You just can't do it. You can't go over there and massacre all these people. You know what I haven't seen HTS doing is massacring the different tribesmen and everybody else over there. It just hasn't happened. I'm a little bit upset that there was one video that I actually did want to show you guys, which was people that were getting captured that were storming the border and coming across and going over there, that ended up getting grabbed up. Now, I do not know what the actual outcome of this is going to be. I really don't. Because truthfully, if Jelani ends up getting killed, HTS is going to go ham. If Jelani ends up getting killed in an airstrike in the next 24 or 48 hours, which I don't think Israel's going to do because they don't want to bring more instability to the region, but I wouldn't put it past them if they did. If they end up killing him or HTS ends up getting uprooted and out of power, you're going to create another power vacuum. Now, hopefully, with that power vacuum, you actually do have the Kurds go in and actually start killing these terrorist POSs. Kurds are not going to go in and just start massacring people to freaking massacre them. It's not the way they do business. It's not what they do. Actually fought besides the Kurds, there's some pretty good people, right? Seriously, they are. And they're pretty dang fair when it comes down to everything else. And they're pretty dang good at what they do. And so I think the Kurds are a very good option. I saw somebody ended up commenting and stating like, oh, here it is. Christian says, I love the idea of supporting the Kurds, but I'm not sure if they can provide the long-term stability to Syria because they are an ethnic and cultural minority. I also think that most of the Kurds want a separate state. You're right. They absolutely do want a separate state. So what if the Kurds actually got in charge of Syria? And then they ended up carving a portion of Syria off for, like, I don't know, call it Kurdistan, right? Feel like that word's been thrown around quite a bit. And that you actually have people that are not radical Islamists that are running Syria. How cool would that be, right? For a little while. I don't know how they go about doing it, but it absolutely needs to happen. Cletus is in the house. I see Pedro Garcia just threw down a Cletus in the chat. CJ, he was in here. Wow, that's freaking amazing. A lot of you guys I haven't seen in a while. So I'm going to come back hot and heavy with you guys with some more information on Ukraine tomorrow morning because there's some more developments that are going on over there right now. There was some reports that I ended up seeing out of Ukraine that was, in my opinion, based off of everything I've read within the last 24 hours, likely a false report or false information that was saying that Ukrainian officers were basically hiding the fact that they were losing a buttload of terrain to the Russians, and that Deep State had somehow uncovered this. Yeah, Deep State. You guys remember Deep State? Deep State had uncovered it and actually started throwing other things out there. I don't know whether or not that's necessarily true. I got to do a little bit bigger of a deep dive into that. So that I will be doing tomorrow morning, and I'll also be keeping you guys updated with the situation. But I want you guys to know this.
لا يرضى أن يكون لوطي واحد يجاهر بفاحشته. هل ترضون أن يكون على أرض القدس وفلسطين لوطيا واحد؟ هل ترضون؟ ولا يرضى شعبنا أن توجد مؤسسات للفاحشة ومقدماتها على أرض فلسطين المباركة الطاهرة. ولا يقبل أن تمس أحكام الشريعة بنقص أو تبديل.
Yeah, you guys get the point. They don't like gay people. Smokey Sargent says the list will never be released. The people on that list are some of the most respected social elites and most respected leaders around the world. We are a powder keg. Releasing the list would cause a total collapse of society. You know what? Oddly enough, I think you're right. I think you're right. And I think that there's a heck of a lot more that ended up going into it. Like I said, blackmail and several other things in order to control a lot of the messed up stuff we've seen going on around the country. There's things that we've looked at and gone, why the hell is this happening in the United States of America? Why the hell is all of this being allowed to happen around the world? And I think the reason it's being allowed to happen around the world, and I think the reason a lot of this stuff is being like happening over here in the United States of America, the reason what everybody looks at and goes, that is a ridiculous situation. There's no possible way the United States government, there's no possible way the EU, there's no possible way the UN could think that, like, there's no possible way this thing, well, maybe not the UN, but there's no possible way these things can be done in the way that they're being done. And I think a lot of it goes down to what Epstein was doing. And that's why he went so dang quick from like $0 to freaking multi-gazillionaire freaking overnight, right? Ladies and gentlemen, well, I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's episode of the Speak the Truth podcast. I sincerely hope that y'all learned something. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, by next time, I mean tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. I will be right here. Tomorrow evening, I'm going to run the live session at the exact same time I did tonight, and I'm going to keep that going as long as you guys like it until I'm told to do otherwise. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, peace, love, happiness, and God bless. I'm out of here.